Good morning or good afternoon, depending on your time zone. My name is Kristen Schrader, and I'm really excited to have this opportunity to share a little bit about Parker Dewey, micro-internships, and to answer whatever questions that you have about how these opportunities might be useful to you at your institution or your organization, as well as in support of your students or perhaps other stakeholders. So again, my name is Kristen. I oversee the different partnerships that we have with universities and nonprofit organizations, and really just very passionate about this model and how it can support your students. And so in short, just happy to help any way that we can, but also want to make this a useful resource for you in the hour of your time. So that being said, please feel free to ask whatever questions that you have in the chat. Yes, we're recording this. Yes, we'll send out the recording at the conclusion of the session. So please feel free, though, keep me posted if you have questions along the way, and we'll address those as short and then quickly in real time as we possibly can. So that you know where we're going for today's session. So the first half will be focused on just general FAQs. So if you don't know anything about micro-internships, Parker Dewey, or any of that, no problem. We'll spend the first portion focusing on those questions. And then the second half is going to be very tactical and strategic. So what are some of our different university and nonprofit organization partners doing to use this model to support and engage their students, their employer partners, and or their alumni? We've seen a lot of different models, a lot of different use cases, especially over the past year and a half. And so if you're looking to be more strategic about how to best leverage this tool, we're here and happy to help explore some of those ideas with you as well. So to just kick it off, what is Parker Dewey? Well, first and foremost, we are very mission driven, as you can see, and we'll see in a little bit of how we're structured and just where we put our focus and our priorities, which is that we were started about over 5 years ago, now closer to 6 years ago, focused on trying to help provide a more effective way for students to go from college to career. Effective meaning both that they were able to make it a more informed career decision, but also breaking down some of the barriers around providing accessible and equitable opportunities and access to opportunities, so that, as we like to say internally, that great companies and organizations can connect to great talent no matter where they go to school and what they chose to study. So we're a Chicago-based company, but we've worked with students across all 50 states, across the country, as well as organizations, large, small, everything in between, companies, for-profit, nonprofit, government, and so on. And particularly the past year and a half, we have been very busy and grown exponentially. However, this is not a new concept. We created the micro-internship concept again a little over 5 years ago. And the idea behind our name, Francis Parker and John Dewey, the two big founders in the field of experiential education. The name was deliberately identified and chosen when our founders started the company because of the focus on the learning by doing model that is at the core of what we are doing in our support of our students. So how do we define micro-internships? Well, for us, they have been and always will be short-term paid professional projects. Those are the three key attributes of the opportunities that can be found on our platform. So short-term in that they're typically between 10 and 40 hours. Yes, they can be longer. Yes, they can be shorter, but the vast majority fall within that range. And when we ran the numbers for 2020, it came out exactly at 20 hours. Doesn't mean it can't be longer than that or shorter, but that's where the majority fall. But the second point is fundamental in that every single opportunity on the Parker Dewey platform must be paid and paid fairly. And what does that mean? Well, it typically shakes out to $15 to $20 an hour, sometimes more than that, sometimes a bit less than that, but every opportunity must be paid. And we actually do reach out to companies regularly if they're posting an opportunity that is where it's unfair compensation given the scope of work. There was a project earlier today that would have shook out to about $6 an hour for the student. And that was an opportunity that is now canceled. Students can't see it on the platform. And we will be reaching back out to the company if the team has chosen already to notify the employer, hey, this is what we do and this is why we work and operate this way. This is not about getting cheap and free labor from college students. And that just goes to our core. We just fundamentally believe that in order to build a more accessible pipeline and pathway for students, they need to be able to be paid and paid fairly. Now it's paid a fixed rate, so you'll see in a little bit how it all works, but students see upfront the scope of work, the time frame, et cetera, and they would then see how much they would be paid if they are selected for that opportunity, so they can then decide, yes, I'm available, I'm interested, this looks like an interesting project, et cetera, and they can then decide if they choose to throw their hat in. But it's a fixed rate in that they'll see the estimated number of hours, but nobody's asking for a timesheet. So if it takes a student 20 hours to do a 20-hour project, great. If it takes him or her 19 hours, 21 hours, again, nobody's tracking their time. It's really based on the scope of work, and having seen thousands of projects, that is what we're looking at when we're vetting each project. And by the way, being a career services professional myself, I definitely know how important vetting opportunities are. Every project on the platform is vetted, both we have a technological method of doing that as well as human, real people going in and vetting these different projects. Two primary vetting criteria that we use is the rate of compensation given the scope of work, as well as the third point that you see on the slide, is the project professional? And so this isn't a place where if a student's looking to get experience babysitting, walking a dog, painting a house, there's other places to go if they're looking for that kind of experience. This is not it. Similarly, it's not appropriate for a company who's looking for somebody who has 10+ years of industry experience, because that's not the talent pool that we have. Those are not career launcher projects. And that's how we define the students and recent grads that are using the platform. This is designed for that sweet spot, those entry-level jobs that we've all seen that require whatever number of years of experience. That truly entry-level, how do you get that experience? Well, a micro-internship can be part of that equation. Which then leads me to the fourth point, and that these projects occur all different industries, all different areas of an organization, and usually not with a whole lot of seasonality. And we've always seen that remote has been a popular approach. Over 90% of the projects, even before the pandemic, were remote opportunities. Now, of course, pretty much everything is. There's exceptions. There's projects that just can't be done remotely, and they're certainly welcome to participate in these opportunities. But the typical things that we see are like what you see on the screen. Sales, HR, IT, these are departments that frequently have projects that just there's not enough hours in the day to complete. But this is not to imply that students need to be in these different majors in order to find projects that are of interest to them. For example, if you look at the bottom left corner, operations, you see things around data or marketing, there's content creation. We see projects all the time that, for example, might be a great fit for a STEM student or a student interested in going into the sciences and has a sophisticated understanding of data that I have absolutely no idea what they're talking about, but they need a student who has a background in some sort of engineering or biological sciences or a more technical field to clean out some data, to write about that data, to put together some sort of graphical representation of that data, et cetera. And we see, again, projects like that regularly. Or they might require a more sophisticated level of data analytics and so on in order to be able to complete that project. And of course, we regularly see projects that do require a student to have some background in IT or app development or web design or in finance or accounting and so on because of the scope of that work. But the vast majority of projects can be completed by students at any stage of their academic career. For example, I worked with a micro-intern back in January who helped me update a PowerPoint. And yes, a high school student would have been able to do that, but I think the student I was working with was in her second year, not because I was looking for a second-year student or anything. It just, she had the best examples of PowerPoint presentations in her profile, and she did a fantastic job. And that's what we are trying to do here, is that by shortening the duration of these projects, it gives students a chance to shine because they're able to fit this into their schedule no matter what other things that they may already be juggling. Student athletes, the students who are already working in whatever jobs that they already have on campus and who just don't have the ability to go and do a summer internship. Maybe there's a student who's studying abroad and they want to try to get some professional experience in addition. These are all students that fit the profile of a micro-intern, and we regularly see complete these opportunities on the platform. And again, they see up front the scope of work, all of that is very transparent to them, so they can then decide if the project is of interest to them. So cost, obviously something very important and top of mind. And as you can see here, it's free for students. And also the partnerships that we offer for universities are also at no cost to your institution. And I'll elaborate a little bit more on what all of that entails. But again, this is our mission. We are very, very highly motivated to try to help make this an accessible platform. Your students already have access to this. Kind of a way to think of us is very similar to how most schools promote LinkedIn. That we're a resource, a tool that most schools will have reference to on their website as a way to network, gain experience in some cases, etc. Same thing here. You're also, your alumni are also eligible to participate in these opportunities, no matter how long it's been since they've graduated. Or even if you have students who maybe took a few classes and are now taking a break, they too can certainly use the platform to take advantage of these different opportunities. And we don't kick folks off after X amount of time since they've graduated, because we recognize that it might take a student 5 seconds to launch their career after they've graduated, or it might take them much longer than that. And again, if you're interested in the university side of things and how we partner with various higher education institutions, we'll get to that in just a moment. But how does it all work for students? And we'll shift gears to focus on organizations in just a moment as well. But for students, they create an account very similar to Handshake, LinkedIn, Indeed, the various profiles that they probably already have created at your institution or elsewhere. It doesn't take a whole lot of time. And again, the platform is open to all students, irrespective of if we've partnered with the institution. And we don't do any single sign-on. And we also don't integrate with any of your IT data. And again, that just ensures that the opportunities remain open to all students. It also makes it really easy if you did want to share these opportunities with your students. You can do so as soon as right now, if you so desire. From there, the students create their profile by adding a bit more about themselves, their experience, their education. They can upload a sample of their resume, samples of their work from various classes, etc. And then they can see the different projects that are currently available. And these are all real screenshots from the students' perspectives. The left side screenshot lists all the different projects. You'll notice there aren't a lot of filters. That's by design, so that students are really encouraged to explore the different options and then not weed out opportunities just because it doesn't necessarily align directly with their major. For instance, we have students who are studying marketing that might miss out on a really fantastic data science project that might align really well with their long-term interests or an industry interest and give them another skill set. Or your students who are studying career areas that just don't align with the job title, your liberal arts students, for instance. They are frequently very successful on the micro-internship platform, largely due to how students are selected for these opportunities. So when they click details, they can read more about the different projects. And then if they choose to apply, the application process is to simply fill out one or sometimes more short answer questions, like what you see on that right side screenshot. Now that serves as the application. It also serves as the interview in most cases. Typically, companies do not choose to do an interview for micro-internships, and they rely on those short answer responses as their sole vetting criteria because they can quickly see, is the student interested? And they can look at their profile, see that they have relevant skills based on the resume that they've uploaded or links to their portfolio or other samples of their work. But they also, through those short answer questions, can quickly see, does the student have good attention to detail? Do they have strong written communication skills? And some of those soft skills that every company needs and wants are very easy to find and identify who is strong in those areas and who not so much based on those short answer responses. Now, there's always at least one question, which is the one that you see on the slide, but companies who are posting micro-internships can add additional questions if they so choose. Now, a couple other things to point out when it comes to the world of micro-internships versus what you're already encouraging your students to complete via internships, full-time jobs, et cetera, is that the cycle times for micro-internships is very, very fast, meaning that a project that's been posted today typically is filled within 24 to 48 hours. Now, there's exceptions to that, but that's the typical cycle times that we see for these different opportunities. So another thing to know is that sometimes companies are filling multiple or one project with multiple students. Now, when that happens, this doesn't mean that the students are doing group work with total strangers. They're still paid the full amount. They're still expected to complete the full amount of whatever the scope of work was that's listed in the job description. But in this case, the company then receives multiple students' perspectives on whatever that project might be. And that middle screenshot with that social media content calendar project, that's a perfect example of a project that we frequently would see multiple students being selected, whether it be designing multiple posts per day for maybe different types of social media platforms. You know, you write for Facebook, you write for Twitter, or whatever. Or they might say, okay, you're going to focus on January and February, and you're going to focus on March and April, or whatever the case may be. Now, the last thing I want to point out is what it means to have a project featured. So again, if you look on the left side screenshot, you'll see that there was one project that's listed under featured projects. And then there's additional projects that are under the all open micro-internships. Now, as of about five or so months ago, companies now have the ability to identify that they only want their project to be visible to students from certain schools or from certain organizations. And I'll explain a little bit more about how that works from the company side in just a moment. But that's what it means to have that project be featured. In this particular example, that left side screenshot is a student from the University of Vermont. They have a small business incubator right there on campus, and so their career services team is in collaboration with the small business development organization on their campus, telling these small businesses, hey, we've got amazing students right here on at UVM who are eager to work on projects for your organization. You can use this platform, post a project, you set the amount that you want to pay for this particular project, and make it exclusive just to a UVM student or to students from UVM and a few other local colleges. And then that is what it looks like when the students are applying for that opportunity. They see it first, but then there's always projects that are open to everybody, even if that particular, if the school or at that given time, there's not a particular opportunity exclusively available to students from that school. So a lot of information there. Again, feel free as you think of questions, go ahead and send them in the chat. But I'm going to go ahead and move right along because there's a lot to cover. Now, if a student is selected, they receive an email from Parker Dewey that says, congratulations, you've been selected to work on whatever the name of the project is. And then they're given several different steps in order to kick off the project. First is to set up an account on our accounting system in order to be paid when the project is done, and students are usually very compliant with getting that done. We'll send them the terms of use as well. We also send them the information for the company that they'll be working with, the point of contact at that organization, and that individual's email address. And we'll say to the student, here's what we recommend you say to kick off the project, and give them a sample email that they can modify, but at least have a starting point in order to reach out to that organization to set up some sort of a kickoff conversation. We'll send them other resources on our website and elsewhere to help them with just keeping their project on track, et cetera. We encourage them, for instance, to reach out to their faculty, alumni, mentor, in order to make sure that they're doing their best work and gaining additional perspectives on the project. One other piece that's in that kickoff email is that if the student is an international student, they are told to reach out to their International Student Services office to confirm that they're eligible for these opportunities. And I'll talk more about that in a moment as well. Now, after the project's completed, again, we encourage students and send them information. Hey, outline your accomplishments, reflect a little bit on what you did, update your resume, et cetera, making sure that they add independent contractor of Parker Dewey for that, for the employer and job title, and then outline what it was that they did for that particular project. And then reflect a bit. What did they learn, like, didn't like, et cetera, and stay in touch with the organization. Because yes, micro-internships can and frequently do turn into longer-term engagements, whether they be additional micro-internships or even internships or full-time roles. And I'll give some examples of those in a moment as well. Now, a little bit more about international students. Yes, they certainly can and do complete micro-internships. However, they do have to have the appropriate work authorization due to the fact that these are paid opportunities. And so, as I mentioned already, when a student is selected for a micro-internship on Parker Dewey, irrespective of if they've said that they're an international student on their profile, every student receives the same information that says, if you're an international student, make sure that you confirm your eligibility by going to your International Student Services office. Now, that said, if your International Student Services office had any questions about what this is, what the student's going to be doing, et cetera, we frequently write letters like what you see pictured on the screen that outlines what the project's all about, what they would be paid and the hours, et cetera, just the whole scope of the project. And the student just needs to request an offer letter such as that, and we will be happy to provide one for them. It is on Parker Dewey letterhead because for every micro-internship, students are on Parker Dewey's books. And I'll explain a little bit more about why and what that means in a moment. But that just makes things a lot easier for organizations and makes it particularly easier for international students. So that way we don't have to reach out to these companies, ask them to go through another hurdle of providing some sort of letter, et cetera. And again, we're happy to provide that upon request of the student. One other question that comes up quite a bit is, can micro-internships be completed for academic credit? And again, having been at 4 different colleges and universities myself in various roles, and actually still teach at the higher ed level, it really depends on the school. And so you can see some examples here. What we typically see is that the vast majority of students are doing these opportunities for their own professional development, irrespective of receiving credit from the institution. Is it an option? As you can see from these examples, absolutely. But typically micro-internships are too short in order to be eligible for credit at most schools. So again, students are doing these for their own professional development, paid professional development. So they are receiving compensation in addition to the experience. But if you're curious to see more about these different programs and how they word this on their website and eligibility criteria, et cetera, you'll receive this PowerPoint later on, and you can certainly dig into some of these schools' websites if that's helpful to you. But now I'm going to switch gears and focus a bit on how things work for organizations, whether it's a for-profit, small or large company, a nonprofit, government organization, et cetera. Irrespective of who the organization is, Parker Dewey is the employer of record for all of the different micro-internships. And students are 1099 independent contractors in most cases of Parker Dewey. Not only does that make it easier for students, because then they're just having all of the payroll and admin and accounting and all that just filled out just to Parker Dewey and not to however many companies that they do micro-internships with. They don't have to worry about the bidding or the IRS type of stuff because, again, we handle all of that for them. But that also makes it a lot easier for companies. What we hear from companies, large and small, is that doing payroll for students can be a really, really big administrative headache. Some of you who may have some sort of student payroll or student workers set up at your own institutions might be able to relate to that, because that's a constraint I hear all the time from various universities that we work with. And so, we handle all of that. We're very much set up to handle this paperwork, et cetera, for these short-term projects. And we also provide protection to these companies in that the company owns the student's work, and we guarantee that they're happy with the deliverable. What we found is that 98% of the time, the company is extremely satisfied with the outcome. And in those 2-ish% of the time, that some sort of hiccup does happen, usually they're resolved very, very quickly early on in the project, maybe because the company's timeline changed and the student's no longer available or whatever, in which in cases like that, the company can pick a different student, or they can just receive a full refund if they've already paid the invoice. Completely up to the company. Now, if the student did provide the finished worked product and they, for whatever reason, quality just wasn't there, as long as they did a good faith effort, we are and do pay the student, compensate the student for his or her time, and even if the company is not fully satisfied with the outcome. And we're able to guarantee that because we find that students are extremely highly motivated to do a really good job, and because micro-internships are competitive opportunities. But again, these situations where the student underperforms is really, really rare. What happens more often is that the student does such a fantastic job that the company wants to continue working with the student. And in which case, we want that to happen. And we definitely don't want that to get anything to get in the way of a student being able to do something long term with the organization, which as a result is why we do not have any sort of conversion fees. The company wants to hire the student for, intern, independent contractor of their own, full-time employee, whatever, fantastic. There's no cost to that organization if they so choose to do so. That's our goal. We want that to happen. We want students to use micro-internships as a leverage, or as a way to gain experience that they can then leverage to a longer-term experience. So that being said, I want to address the question that I had when I first heard about Parker Dewey 4 or so years ago, which is, okay, this is free for students, it's free for universities. Where does the payment all come into play? How does Parker Dewey stay in business? Well, in short, it comes from the companies and these for different individual projects, and we are as transparent as we possibly can be about all of this. So I want to cover it here. But in short, when a company posts a project, they can do so at no cost. We only invoice them once they've selected one or however many students that they want to work with for that particular project. We hold that payment in escrow while the student is working on the project. And then once the project is completed, we pay the student 90% of what the company paid us for that particular project. Now, just to be clear, when the student is looking at the opportunity, they are seeing the project posted at 90%. So that payment and that middle screenshot that you see of $360, that is the 90% that the student would receive. The company here, Sharp Connections, they would pay Parker Dewey $400 at the onset of the project once they've selected however many students that they would want to work with. But the student receives $360 of that $400. The $40 that we retain covers our costs. Most of which is consumed by us having the student on our books. But that is the only fee, and that is the only cost that keeps the lights on here at Parker Dewey. So again, if you have questions about any of that, happy to address those, but I definitely want to make sure that was covered. When it comes to companies posting projects, they can start from a clean slate, like what you see on the left side, where they can stipulate, okay, this is what I need done, this is the department, number of hours, the cost, etc. I can start from a blank slate. We also have a project library where they can click on any of the different examples in the project library, and it's all pre-populated onto the Parker Dewey platform. They can edit it however they see fit, but it does make it a lot easier, and most companies do tend to choose projects that are already pre-scoped for them, so they can already see, this is how many hours it's expected to take, etc. And any organization is always welcome to reach out to our client success team, as we are always standing by and happy to advise organizations on what the appropriate compensation would be, if the project's even appropriate for a student or a micro-intern to work on at all, etc. And then they set the start and end date, and they can then identify if they want to work or to limit, the project to students from certain schools or from certain organizations. Now, schools, it's just as it says, they can choose one college or university or as many as they wish. And then it would only be visible to students who have those schools in their profile. Now, affiliations are the nonprofit organizations that we work with that are also focused on trying to help students bridge the gap from college to career. So for example, we are partnered with organizations like the Dream.us, which focuses on undocumented students and dreamers. We are partnered with the United Negro College Fund, Dell Scholars, and a number of other organizations that, again, have this mission of trying to help students within their network or community. And so they too can identify and post or engage their employer partners who post projects exclusively for their students. And we regularly see that as another way to engage their various employer partners. Now, from the company's perspective, we are quite a bit different from Handshake, Simplicity, and the other resume and job boards that your institutions are already probably using. And a big way that we're different is that a company can't see any student until they post a project. And then the only students that they can see are those students who applied. So in other words, we are not a resume database. It's one of the ways that we help protect the privacy of students. And again, they're not sending any personal information to any company that is posted on the platform, since we are handling all of that administration on their behalf. But when a company has posted a project, they'll only see the applicants that have applied. They can, if they want, filter by school, filter by those organizations, filter by associate, bachelor's, et cetera, and a few other categories. But what I definitely wanted to point out as well is some of the categories that they can't filter by, such as academic major or GPA. And those are intentionally not options for companies to use, because we find, and there's been research to show, that oftentimes those categories can inadvertently weed out otherwise amazing students. Those students who maybe just had a hard time adjusting to college in their early academic semesters, and their GPA unfortunately shows it. But they are very often missing out on opportunities because of that lower GPA when they're taking some of their non-academic major coursework. And then again, they're weeded out, unfortunately. Or those students that are in majors that don't necessarily align to an academic job or a career field, et cetera, and again, are very easily overlooked. So we don't have those categories, and that encourages students that come from various underrepresented backgrounds, in many cases, to be given a chance to shine. The other piece that we frequently see is that because of those short answer questions, it's really easy for students to be able to articulate, yep, I'm a good fit, and maybe I'm not, based on answers like this second example here, where if they're saying I'm a hard worker or my resume has no typos, those are not strong responses. Those are not ones that are going to allow a student to be successful. And unfortunately, we do regularly see responses like this, that essentially a student has wasted their time if they submitted an application response like this. These are competitive opportunities, and so it's really important that a student takes the time to thoughtfully answer each of those questions. Very similar to the advice that you're giving to your students when they're applying for a job or internship. They should customize the responses, carefully edit it, make sure that there's no typos, and make sure that they are just putting their best foot forward when they're answering the questions. One last point about the organizations is that they do have the opportunity to give feedback at the conclusion of the project. And so this is what the feedback form looks like at present. One thing to know is that this is visible for students. So the students can see this feedback so that they can know whether they need to work on something, or areas of strengths and perhaps opportunities for growth. But this is also not visible to other companies. So this isn't where students get a 5-star Yelp review or a 3-star Google review or anything like that. We recognize that they're students. And so there might be a reason that they have not performed to the best of their ability, and we don't want them to then not be able to secure their next micro-internship because they're constantly learning, that they're constantly growing. That's the purpose of higher education. And so we really want them to take this feedback, grow from it, learn from it, but not be blackballed from it in the eyes of future employers who are using the platform. Now, last couple things before we talk a bit more about some of the strategic sides of the conversation. Where does Parker Dewey fit in the larger ecosystem of various platforms that you're already using or perhaps sharing with your students? And every school that we work with has Handshake, Simplicity, or some of the other similar job board recruiting platforms that are specialized for higher education. Obviously, we're quite a bit different from those platforms in the types of opportunities that are posted, but particularly in the support that we provide to those companies. The fact that we handle all of the payroll, the admin, and so on makes it a lot easier for those organizations to get their projects up and running, because they don't have to figure out W-2, 1099, or how payroll works for those. And if you think about some of those smaller companies that may not be hiring for a full-time job or internship, they might be a really great fit for something like a Parker Dewey, because then they can still work with your students, but they don't have to worry, and still offer something paid for your students, but then they don't have to worry about the HR and legal and all that kind of stuff. Now, how we're different from other gig platforms, Upwork, Fiverr, and so on, a lot of it is in our mission in that we are truly focused specifically on college students and recent grads. So the type of projects and work is focused on that, but also in the motivations of why companies are using micro-internships in Parker Dewey versus Upwork, Fiverr, et cetera, is that they're using it as a recruitment tool, not to replace internships, full-time jobs, or anything else that they're doing or going to your career fairs, et cetera, but rather trying to identify students that they're missing through those various recruitment tactics. Because not every student can go to a career fair. They're only at a given time, and even when they're all remote, not every company can go to them either. But when they post a micro-internship, they're immediately connected to a nationwide pool of students at all stages of their academic year, all majors, all schools, and they can then engage with these different opportunities whenever and however they want. It's a very flexible option for them as well. And then the other piece too with the gig platforms is a conversion fee. So if a student in the company, they find that they're a great match, we don't charge any sort of conversion fees if the company wants to hire them. Now, the alumni platforms, People Grow, Graduate, et cetera, a lot of the schools that we work with are also using those alumni platforms. But again, if they do have some sort of a micro-internship or job board attached to them, there is no mechanism for your alumni to be able to pay their students through those platforms. And so that can put the alumni at risk, the alumni's company at risk, et cetera. So we have many of our university partners who are using People Grow, Graduate, et cetera, but then they're also saying, hey, if you want to do something paid, you can post it on Parker Dewey and be able to then protect your company, protect you as an individual, but more importantly, also pay the student for the work that they're doing and not do something under the table. And it's just legally above board and just protects everybody and is just done the right way. So again, hopefully some of these differences are helpful and as you kind of navigate what all of this means. The other pieces too I wanted to stress is some of the results that we've seen where micro-internships have directly benefited students, particularly in their overall outcomes. We found, for example, that compared to NACE data for the under and unemployment of recent college grads, those who have completed micro-internships are far more likely to be employed, and they're far more likely to stay at that employer for over a year or more. So the first year retention rate for companies is really low, as you can see from that middle statistic. And then we find too that micro-internships, when it comes to just overall costs to the employer, they can fall out to be far less expensive, particularly for those organizations who are trying to really prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion when it comes to their hiring goals. What we found, you can see this in that white section, that the second bullet point over, is that over 80% of micro-internships have been completed by students from underrepresented backgrounds. And so this is something that we're really proud of, but it's not something necessarily that we pat ourselves on the back for, but rather say that's a testament to the students who are amazing no matter where they go to school, but through these shorter term projects and the fact that they're paid, this gives them a more accessible option to be able to be given that chance to shine in front of a nationwide network of organizations who want to connect with them. And so that's why we're really proud of the students that complete these different opportunities and the results to show for it. And just to give you a couple of specific testimonials, different companies, large, small, and everything in between, who are using micro-internships to leverage into a longer-term engagement. And again, these are just four of many, many, many examples that we've seen before the pandemic and certainly since of where micro-internships are making a difference and an impact. So that being said, again, if you have questions about nuts and bolts, feel free to send them into the chat. But I'm going to now take a little bit of a breath and go ahead and shift gears towards talking now about how we work with universities, large, small, everything in between, over 450 colleges and universities and counting. But if you're just hearing about micro-internships and this is new to you, no worries, because we don't do any direct marketing or outreach to colleges and universities anywhere. Every one of these partnerships have come through word of mouth. And so we're honored and happy to collaborate and partner with any school that would find this to be of use, as long as it's a US-based institution. But we don't do any sort of outreach, and there's no real rhyme or reason why we work with schools in one area and not in another. Now, that being said, what does a university partnership entail? And again, there is no cost to this. But to start off, we'll build out a landing page, or in some cases pages, to help you market your program. We'll send different marketing resources and just continue to send different collateral and give you different avenues to keep your program fresh and share best practices and other ideas. We'll also notify you, or whatever contact you desire, when projects are posted specifically for your students or by a company who found us via your landing page. And then lastly, again, higher ed is always focused on data, so we are more than happy to share the relevant metrics around your students, and in some cases, employer alumni, if you wish to know those organizations and individuals who are posting projects for your students as well. So let me elaborate on each of those. I know there's a lot there. First of all, the landing page, we have a standard template, but as you can see from these examples, there's a lot of opportunities to customize. So for instance, some schools say, could we change it, the word micro-internships, to something else? Sure, as you can see from these different examples. Or in some cases, schools have asked us to to add additional sections for specialized populations, international students, undocumented students, et cetera. Again, happy to make those customizations for you, or to send you examples of what other schools have requested. We build these pages out for you. All that we need is whatever logo or whatever images of your campus or your students that you wish to use, or we have stock photos if you don't feel comfortable, or if it's just too much of a burden to get those images. We can always swap them out at a later time. So one day, I hope those COVID-specific pictures, like that bottom right corner, will no longer be relevant. We'll be mask-free everywhere if you're not already at your institution. But we can always swap those out for you again anytime, or make any customizations that you wish at any time if you already are a university partner. Marketing materials, again, I've got a bunch of different toolkits. We do webinars and newsletters, et cetera, to help keep your program fresh, share best practices. Any and all of these marketing collateral is customizable. And if you don't see something that you're looking for, we're happy to design something or work with you and your marketing team to make sure that you have what you need. And then lastly, data, so that you can see and measure how many students have signed up, how many have engaged the platform, applied for projects, been selected, et cetera. Happy to share these updates with you upon request. So just let me or a member of the team know that you're interested in these numbers, and we're happy to give you those updates. Now, this will include all of the students and or alumni who have signed up for the platform and listed your school in their education section of their profile, or who signed up via whatever .edu email address that your school uses. So that's how we capture them. And again, happy to provide you with these updates. Just send us an email so that you can see the most current data. Now, I want to close by just sharing with you some ideas for schools and other partners that we've worked with and how they've built a successful micro-internship program. Now, many of the schools that we work with say, you know what, this is a great resource. I just want to share it with my students, at least for now. And if so, fantastic. We're happy to build out a landing page for you. We're happy to provide you with all those different marketing collateral, data, et cetera. Just let us know how and when we can be helpful, and we're there. But for those organizations, those universities who are really interested in helping to leverage micro-internships strategically and to help their students be as successful as possible, definitely recommend that you consider some of these additional ideas because that's the best way to help your students stand out amongst this national pool of students that they'd be competing against for these opportunities. So for instance, sharing this with your alumni and employers is a great way to not only engage your alumni and employers in a new way, but also for those organizations or individuals to post projects exclusively for your students. And that just gives them more opportunities that they can apply for. So let me just elaborate on some of the things that we've done with our various university partners. For instance, engaging your alumni. What we've seen is that schools like Colby College have been able to leverage micro-internships as a way to say, hey, you know what, the pandemic has been really hard for our students. And Colby reached out to us in April of 2020 saying, we want to have a menu of options for alumni to help support our students, particularly the class of 2020. And so micro-internships were part of that menu, and they had a bunch of alumni post projects exclusively for their students and engaging their students, particularly the class of 2020, in these opportunities. To help the facilitate that, we built out the page that you see here, and have since built out for a bunch of other schools, which makes it very easy for companies to post projects, companies, alumni, or whoever they are. For example, if you were to click on that lead generation project on the right side screenshot, that project is pre-populated, and so the information is already there, the job description, the rate of pay, etc. It can be edited, but it makes it really easy for that UNC Chapel Hill alum or an employer partner at that institution or wherever to get that project started and up and running. And it can be then traced back to Colby, UNC Chapel Hill, or whatever school that page is from. And we can feature up to 12 different projects, swap out the ones that aren't a good fit for your students, so that it's a really good and appropriate mix given the students' demographics as well as the companies that you plan to engage. There's no cost to this, just again, a resource that many schools have found to be helpful. Again, they can feature their projects specifically for your students. This has been a great way for alumni to have a new way to engage, a new way to connect, and particularly alumni who may be a little bit more new to, more recent graduates. So they might be in their first few years after they've completed their degree and not necessarily in a financial position to write that 4 or 5 figure check that hopefully one day they'll be able to write to your institution. But this is a way where they can, if they've got a boatload of stuff on their plate, no problem. They can post their project and then pick a student from their alma mater, pay with their credit card, their P card, and now they don't have to loop in their HR. It's much like what they would do if they were to go to Kinko's and somebody would help them make copies. Of course, the projects in this case are much more professional, but it's the same type of mindset in terms of how this works from an HR standpoint. We also are seeing a lot of different colleges that have developed their own micro-internship project or program as a way to engage alumni and also supporting students. And it's a way that they can, it's facilitating mentoring and networking collaborations by working on these different micro-internship projects. And so we're seeing colleges fund them through their career services budgets, fund them through alumni donated funding, a variety of different cases. We're really proud and excited to be working with Swarthmore College and a bunch of other schools to facilitate programs like this. Swarthmore, their example, so they started their alumni mentor micro-internship program back in right after the early days of the pandemic, ran it themselves for the first year, but found that in order to scale the program and just the administration of it was a lot of work. And so they reached out to us, and we now are powering their program, design these websites for them, and handle all of the admin and behind the scenes and provide the appropriate reporting and data to just give them one less thing that they have to worry about while also still maintaining this really awesome program. For employers, there's a lot of strategic ways that micro-internships can be used to just give your employers and your company something new. So for instance, we see a lot of schools feature different companies, maybe on employer partners on some sort of a board within their office. There was a conversation in the NACE community just this morning about that. Well, this option of posting and adding company logos to your school's landing page can be a really interesting way for companies like Microsoft, Pepsi, et cetera, to be able to augment whatever branding that you're already providing them through your employer partnership programs. They can not only have their logo on their micro-internship page and also then provide micro-internships for your students, but we can also share with them the data so that they understand how many views and clicks, et cetera, that their pages have received from being on your website. So that can give you some nice tangible metrics to gauge students' level of interest in opportunities at Microsoft, Pepsi, et cetera. But this also can be a revenue generating opportunity for your institution by adding this as part of your micro-internships or as a part of your sponsorship packages that you're already offering to your institutions. So to your companies and your employer partners. What we've seen is that companies have allocated their sponsorship dollars elsewhere. I've had a bunch of conversations with schools around sponsorships, and the uniform response seems to be, yeah, we still have a program, but companies really went elsewhere, and it's not as many of them signed up, particularly over the past year and a half. And what we've seen for particularly some of our nonprofit partners is that micro-internship sponsorships can offer these companies a new way to engage, a new way to give back, and a new way to just gain some benefit, some direct, tangible benefit from their sponsorship programs. So the bare bones of how this all works is whatever sponsorship dollar value that you want can then be allocated whatever split that you want. So in this example, it's a 50-50 split, $5,000 sponsorship, half goes to your institution, the other half goes to your students to fund micro-internships at the sponsoring company. This gives you some more metrics and data and just ways to say, hey, we were able to provide direct opportunities for our students. That also can help with some of your data and reporting and just when you put together some of your accreditation and then other annual reports. These are metrics that all can be added in. And also it helps derive some more direct benefits. In addition to posting it on a bulletin board in your office or giving them a nice parking spot or place at a career fair, this gives them some even more direct benefit that is directly augmenting their talent acquisition and recruitment efforts. And of course, you're gaining some sponsorship revenue because this is a new way to engage perhaps new sponsors or sponsors that have gone elsewhere over the past year or year and a half. So happy to elaborate on some of those ideas. It's helpful. We have a toolkit as well. But some other ideas of other schools that have reached out to their employer partners, so University of Iowa, Howard University, et cetera. They've done mass campaigns to all of the different companies that are within their employer network and database to encourage them, hey, this is a new way to connect with our students. And it might be a way that is more accessible to companies who maybe already are not able to come to your career fair due to scheduling or capacity or whatever. Maybe you don't have a full-time job or internship. This can be a way that they can still provide opportunities for your students and augment their talent recruitment goals. And then one other idea is through engaging your local community. We find that micro-internships can be a really great fit for small businesses, and that engaging local communities, and especially in conjunction with a small business development center or your chamber of commerce within your town or community. We've done webinars for these different chambers and organizations and have had a really positive response when we are hosting these sessions in conjunction with the university. And it's just a great way to spread the word en masse and to then just generate opportunities for your students. So the Greater Akron Chamber, it was introduced to us by the University of Akron, and they continue to see activity in their region around micro-internships. And then Cincy Tech, it's a Cincinnati-based tech incubator where they have collaborated specifically with University of Cincinnati and Miami University in Ohio, and have faculty that they work with and are within their network who are essentially identifying some of their top students to work on projects for these Cincinnati-based tech firms. So it's been a really interesting way to, again, connect small businesses to students in that local community, but also engaging faculty in a new way as well. One other strategy that we've seen a ton of over the past several years is schools who have grant funding that they are allocating towards micro-internships. The rationale being we can sponsor X number of students with a grant and a full-scale internship, but we can sponsor so many more students to gain experience through these shorter-term projects. It's also a lot easier for nonprofit and smaller organizations to take on somebody for a short-term project than for something that's going to last 10 or 12 weeks. And so what we've done with the University of Cincinnati, John Carroll, and then now with our Kansas Micro-Internship Program, which is a state-funded and statewide initiative throughout the state of Kansas, is handle the administration, the legal, et cetera. We also provide the platform for these organizations to connect with the students. And so, again, happy to elaborate on these different programs, and you can certainly click on the links if you want to learn more. And then lastly, we see a lot of schools who are funding micro-internships themselves. So maybe they have, need some extra help there, don't have a work-study student, or they're maybe using Parker Dewey to help with some things short-term, or a student worker, or what have you. Again, lots of different use cases. And so again, we're handling the invoice, payroll, et cetera. You can pick your own students. Some cases, they already know who they're picking in advance, and this is more just we help with the admin. So however, and whatever we can do to help, certainly that's another option for you. So again, as you can see, there are a lot of ideas, a lot of different ways that micro-internships can be leveraged. And so hopefully some of these ideas were helpful, as that is truly what we're trying to do. And so if nothing else, we've got a bunch of different emails that are pre-crafted for you. If you wanted to share this with your employers, alumni, students, et cetera, you can get started right away. I'll send out the slides for you today so that you can go ahead and get this up and running very, very quickly if you wish. And then, as I mentioned already, we're happy to build out those different landing page examples for you. We have a very quick form that you can fill out where you can say, I want this page, I want it to look like this, etc. And we can get that up and running typically within 24 hours of receiving whatever image or photos or just details about the site that you're looking for, so we can get that started. And you can, again, get started sharing these opportunities with your students as soon as possible. So with that, if you have any final questions, happy to stick around for another moment or two, but just want to say a big thank you for taking the time to learn a little bit more about micro-internships in Parker Dewey. And just please, my email is on the slide. I'll also be following up later today with the collateral that I mentioned earlier in the presentation. But don't be a stranger. If there's anything that we can do to help, just please let me know. Above all, please stay safe. Very crazy times that we're in right now, and I so hope that you are doing well, you and your team and your students, and definitely please really want to help however we can.